why weren't there any lie detectors? Why weren't there any experts on psychology that were brought in from other areas that didn't have to have any connection to these police officers, to these people, to this city?
Yeah.
Sadly, you're looking at it with the eyes of it being like an O.J. Simpson trial when it was really just like, I
Yeah.
mean, it captivated the entire state, but it was clear. First of all, it should have moved venues to a different county, like in the sense of
Far away, yeah.
further, like into
Like move it to
Milwaukee
Ohio or
Green
something.
Bay, just even to a bigger city, that didn't have
Yeah.
such a close tie that's one county over, or whatever it is. It feels now that it is getting a fair and balanced shot at hearing the whole thing, because when the trial was going on, I feel like probably the people in Wisconsin, the state, everybody across the nation had probably made up their opinion based on his history without knowing any of all those in-depth details. So by the time those people sat in that jury box, they're not supposed to know anything. They've heard enough.
Right.
The public has made up their mind. The local media, as you saw from all that, had probably made up their mind. So he didn't really get a fair shot, the defense side, at telling it in a fair and balanced way. So now these documentary filmmakers are getting this bad blow for showing it in a slanted way when maybe it skews one way or the other. There's 700 hours of footage they have to field through in order to come up with a story. But at the same time, it's like, well, no, we just took 10 years to come out with our side of the story, trying to show it as we saw it, as we were able to put it together. For the 2 years that this went on, from her being murdered to when he was convicted, that side was specifically and only one that showed guilt and guilt only. The media was to blame the first round, so if you're going to blame the media now, blame them on the first round too.
The thing that pissed me off the most was the reporters, and obviously being someone who works in the media industry, when they interviewed the Dateline reporter in episode 4. This is how much it stood out to me. I remember exactly. They interviewed the Dateline reporter about the coverage, and she said, well, it's all about murder right now. Like, our competition needs the murder. It's whoever can get that story. And she said, murder is so hot right now, and I wanted to punch her in the face. And it gave me this dirty feeling, like, oh crap, I do this for a living, kinda. We're talking about the jury obviously making up their mind and knowing the story. I felt like it was kind of like A Time to Kill. Remember that he wanted to change a venue for the same reason. Like, people had already made up their mind, and then you had that one juror who was in the book, it was a juror who skewed the rest of the jury. It was Matthew McConaughey's character in the movie, but and unfortunately Steven Avery didn't have that very powerful juror that was written by Grisham. Yeah, exactly. So this was real life, unfortunately. But I don't know. I mean, whether he did it or not, it's like, I've heard this online, and I completely agree. I don't know if you guys listen to Serial with Adnan Syed, but it doesn't matter either way if the people did it. I mean, it does, but the bigger problem is the flaws in our system.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, that's the biggest issue.
And there were so many parts that I sat there thinking, oh my God, this is just like the whole Serial payphone thing. This is exactly like that same scenario. Why is it that we're glossing over this because we just kind of want to get to the next thing? And honestly, the big red flag, glaring, huge kind of thing that points to the prosecution really mucking this up is the fact that Manitowoc Sheriff's County was not supposed to be on the grounds. And not only were they on the grounds, but they were all up in it everywhere. And they lied. Lens gets pointed out in court. What time would you say you were there? And every time the defense asked some question, I was like, oh God, because it's like watching it's like watching cheaters. You can't, it's so hard, right? But there's Lens on the stand being like, oh, I'd say I was there at about 6 o'clock, and you're like, oh, that's interesting, because here's your thing that says you signed at like 10 o'clock, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So you have all these hours unaccounted for. Would that sound about right? Well, I guess it would. And then that's all there is.
Right.
And then there was this whole thing where you're not allowed to accuse anybody else because all you're supposed to do is defend your client, and that's it. And I call shenanigans on that. I shenanigans.
And the fact that the guy who was the one on site that wasn't supposed to be there was the same guy who was involved with the prior case.
And how no one has a problem with this.
No.
Like, nobody has a problem. Like, that's okay.